Hi, this is Roger, thanks for dropping by. A while back we had a look at this flowering cherry, Kojo-no-Mai. Tiny little dwarf flowers, pale pink to white, white to palish pink, and pendulous. So very, very attractive blooms. It's been grown as a tree, as a garden tree for some time. It's a story again. Initially it was I got it to turn it into a bonsai, and then something changed and I decided to just let it grow on as a tree. And now I've come round full circle and I'm going to turn it into a bonsai. And I thought we could have a look at it. Now most of the leaves are off, we can see what we're up against here. And I have a theory, which I have no idea if it's true or not, but obviously all the nutrients and everything have been absorbed back into the tree from the leaves, or they will have. It's nearly finished now, there's still a few green ones, but most of that's happened now. So the energy has been brought back into the tree. Now this is going to flower before the leaves come out. My theory is that that's going to use up a fair amount of the stored energy to do the flowering bit, which is going to leave a bit of a deficit to push the leaves on. So the tree must have to manage this as a two-stage release of that stored up energy, basically. One to produce the flowers, and then, you know, as the flowers start to fade and everything, it's got to push the leaves out as well. So it's a two-staged approach. And my theory, which is what we're going to do today, is to relieve that pressure, because obviously the best time to repot this and get it out of this pot would be as the leaves break, when it's already used up some of its energy. So my idea today is to reduce the amount of wood. I'm not going to try and style it, but what I'm looking for is stuff that's just fundamentally wrong. Crossing branches, all that sort of thing. I don't think there's any dead wood on here, but branches that point back into the centre of the tree, and you know, all that sort of stuff, and just reduce it down a bit so that the tree hasn't got as much to do in the spring. There won't be as many blooms to produce because some of the branches will have been cut off that would have bloomed. There won't be so many leaves to produce because, again, some of the branches have been taken off. And that should ease the stress on it that's going to be generated by taking it out of the pot and playing about with the roots. You know, so that's my theory. I could be totally wrong, but that's what we're going to do. And I've only got a small knob cutter, which is not going to be suitable for a lot of these branches. So at this point I'm just going to use the secateurs. Now we have a jumble down here. We have a thick branch heading upwards with a branch coming right out to here. So that's a very, very long branch. And it's rubbing up against a lower branch which turns upwards. Now, as far as a bonsai is concerned, the chances are the branch pointing upwards would get some wire on it and lower it down as a layer. Well, obviously the branch that points upwards would be the one to take off, wouldn't it? So we'll start by taking that off. I'll try and keep all the mess in here if I can. And if that is the branch that's going to become a layer, we then need to look at what will be the outline of that layer. And we've got a branch coming up here, that could become part of it, but not with a sticking up bit. So we'll take the bit that sticks up. This bit heads right across the tree. I'm not going to take it right back, I'm going to take it back to where there's some buds. We may extend our layer out sideways. Again, crossing branches, we can do without those. And where's my pad going to be? How extensive is it going to be? It is my first branch. Or is it? Should we look at that? No. It's out of scale with the rest of the tree, as are these other little bits on the trunk. But it is good to see that tree will shoot out from the trunk should I ever need it to. I don't at the moment. So that's that. We get these tiny little spurs on this tree that clutter up the line, basically. So cat's come to say hello. He's down there, so you can't see him. So back to this original layer. And I would suggest that this branch that comes up over the top of it would be wrong. So that one's going to come right off, right back there. That's quite a large branch, really. Now what are we looking at? Things sticking up like that, like that. Now I'm looking at this as, I'm starting to think of this as a pad now. This could be wired and become part of this pad. Yes, so if it's going to become part of this, there's too much wood on it. So we'll have to remember that that one was destined to come round sideways like this. Come on. Sticking up here badly, so that'll have to come off. Great big long bit going right through the middle of the tree. Right. Branch splitting into three, take the middle one out, as it is also sticking up. Now what about here? Well, first of all, this one's going to come round here, yes, so that'll become part of this branch. Sticking up bit. And either way, this bit is going to hang over the top of it. So we'll have that off there. And that strange shaped piece there. That will be a back branch in effect, in which case we might need to keep that long bit, so we won't take too much off of that. Right, so coming back to here then. This bit is too long. It's got two little shoots here, which may grow. But the fact that this shoots out from anywhere, I'm going to take it back to that knuckle, and it may well shoot out then. Now it's a bit too far. Let's come forward to where there's a bud. We'll take it back to there. Now, where are we now? There. Sticking up. Take it back to a bud that points outwards, not back in towards the tree. Always. There's no point in pointing what could be a nice extension to a branch back in the wrong direction. That's a waste of time, isn't it? And then we'll just take these ends off. These ends, these little shoots here, would be non-flowering shoots. They won't have buds on. So as I say, I don't want to take all the blooms off. I want to have a view of the blooms. That bit heads back towards the middle of the tree, so I'll get rid of that. And again, pointing outwards. Right, so that's our first branch with that bit round there. I'm not doing it now. And when you look at the shape of the trunk now, and we've got effectively this branch is almost as thick as the trunk, but not quite. And it has got some shape to it, so it's okay, it'll do. That will be our next branch, and that will head out into that space there. Then we come up into the tangle, and it is a tangle as well. So again, little bits on the trunk, we'll have those off. Just make it look untidy. But what we have got to think about now is, where is our branch structure? What are we going to do with this branch? It comes dead straight up off of the trunk. If I take it off, I've got an enormous gap. But let's just think again, that's going to be there. That will become a layer, slightly over the top. Where's our next layer? Well, actually it's here, isn't it? So this whole piece could come off. It will look like it's leaving a huge gap, but it won't, because this can come round into it. And that branch starts here. It goes up and round and then divides. So I think this whole piece needs to come off. That's a lot of the tree gone. And you know, when you're talking about reducing the volume of the tree, that's a lot of it. Not going to fit. I'd like to go around there. Right, so now we can see the shape, and we now know that this is going to be our next layer. This is going to be our next pad. So sticking up stuff, we have to stop and think, you know, we can wire, we can change the shape, and we need a, that won't be there, that'll be lower down. So we need that branch, some of that, some of that, some of that, and some of that wired. We probably don't need these here, but what I want to do is cut them now so that they might shoot out, and the shoots can then be wired into that part of the tree. But we do need to get rid of a fair bit of the length here, because this is where our extension is, this is where our extremity will be. This has got to come up over the top to there. So we're looking at probably about there. It's quite a vigorous growing tree, this. So I'm not too worried about, you know, ooh, taking too much off. It'll grow again. It's not a big deal. But pick branches that are going to head off. These are alternate buds, yeah? So they're not opposite buds, they're alternate. But they're not really, they're more like spiral, yeah? So you can get buds pointing downwards, upwards and out to both sides, but they appear one after the other along the branches. There are no pairs, so you don't get that effect. Right, so we've just got that big bit there, a little bit on the end, come off to pointing in the direction we want, and this one about there. Right, so that will be a wired layer there, yeah, and spread those out. Get a layer here. Right, so that goes off in that direction. Now we've got one coming over here that needs to. Now we've got to think about what we're going to do about an apex. Are we even going to have one, or is the tree just going to fan out? It's going to be quite a large bonsai as it stands now. With this layer here, do we want anything above it? Well, yes we do, but it needs to be much smaller. So that's possibly this branch here comes next. We'll assume that one's going to be next then. So we'll take that one back to smaller, so that when it's wired it'll be okay. Right, it's not going to be an apex, it's going to be a layer, so that would be wired. So we won't take any more off of that because I haven't decided how long that's going to be. Now what we've got to look at is interference. And interference is got these little tags all over the place. They're everywhere. I call them tags, stumps. They're just where little branches have started to grow and failed, and they just leave a stump. Little tag. Just break them off with your fingers effectively, but they spoil the line basically, so they don't need to be there. Right, so where are we getting to then? So we've now got our lower branch, we've got our next one out into that space, we've got our next one up above those two there, and those can be wired so that they make more of a layer, and any that's excess can be taken off at a later date. This isn't perfect styling, it's just to remove a fair bit and, you know, relieve the tree in the spring so that it hasn't got so much to do. And then when I disturb the roots, it shouldn't have quite such a shock, such a setback. So what are we going to do here then? Is this an apex? Is this an apex? See, if it's an apex here, I'm not sure how much this is going to bend, but there are a lot more branches here in a cluster than anywhere else to be able to make an apex. What else could it be then? It also gives some movement and brings the tree back towards us. So it heads off, curls round and then comes back towards us, which means everything else is branches, not apex. So this is probably the best. It will bend enough to just curl it up like that to become an apex. So it brings the line of the trunk around and slightly towards the front, which means these are branches, which means that this is too cluttered. So this is going to be a branch now. I'm going to have to refer back to this because come the spring I'll have forgotten everything. I'll have forgotten all the decisions. Yeah, so this becomes a branch. So again, find a bud that points in the right direction. It's difficult to judge that because once you put wire on, you often alter the angle. You know, it twists as well as bends, but we'll make an assumption. Right, so that's a branch here. Now we've got a lot heading off in this direction, and quite honestly, we've got a big hole here, and I think this could come down into there, help fill out that area there. So with some wire, this could become quite a substantial branch here. Oh, it's that whiny dog again. Sorry, it just reminds me of, I have this strange mind that deals with trigger words, sentences, expressions that immediately remind me of something else. I just call them triggers. And that noise has just triggered me to thinking of an episode of Big Bang Theory, and back in the days when Raj couldn't speak if there were women present unless he'd had alcohol. And Sheldon's very attractive sister was staying with Penny opposite, you know, and they'd all taken it in turns to go over and ask Missy out. And when it came to Raj's turn, he knocked on the door and the alcohol wore off, and all he could do was and Missy looked up and said, "We had a dog like that once, made a noise like that, we had to put it down." And it just reminds me of that dog. Dogs shouldn't make noises like that, they really shouldn't. Ugh. I don't think it's a very old dog. I think it's not a puppy as such, but it is a young dog. And I don't think it's accepted being on its own yet. Which, you know, I mean, you've got working people. The dog's going to have to spend some of the day, if not a lot of it, on its own. Well, perhaps you should think of that before you get the dog. Not exactly fair, is it? Right, so this tangle over here, this becomes a branch here, so that is at that height. This goes down and fills some of this space, so we can wire that down and then get it to shoot out and fill out. As with all deciduous trees, you know, you work on them to get the ramification. Well, there's no point in me trying to do that now. All I'm trying to do is work out what I'm keeping, Right, so if this is going to be the apex, well, it's a lot more than there needs to be. So we'll take it down and then work out where it's going to shoot out. Again, crossing branches, tags, this great big bit here. We'll see what that does, but if I can get it to shoot out that way, that'll be okay. Little one here, pointing upwards in this case. Once we get up near the apex, we can allow buds to go vertical. What about this long bit here? Bud there. And this bit is crossing over this bit, so it's one or the other. We'll have this one because it droops slightly, so we'll make that one head upwards. Big long crossing branch there. That can come off. I'm going to push an awful lot of growth into this tree for next year, because hopefully it's got so much stored energy that it won't need to do anywhere near as much blooming, and what's left is going to go into growth, and it should be quite substantial. This tree's never been pruned. About there, I think. Right, that'll do. Greatly reduced the volume of wood. I do need to take these back over here. Again, long extensions. They're going to be wired, but they're still not going to end up that long. And the one good thing about this cherry is it does produce its own zigzaggy branches sometimes. Other times it doesn't, and they're dead straight. Yeah, that'd be alright. We could wire that. Wire that. That'll give us some width. Yep. And then we know that this one's coming round here, that one's going down, and this becomes our first branch. Yeah, happy with that. Now it'll go out the door, because it didn't come in very well. There was language, basically. There was language, because as I brought that tree in the door, it knocked over 3 of my orchids. Grr. So we used some appropriate words, and hopefully we won't need to use any more on the way out. Just get rid of these dead leaves. As most of them are off now. We've got quite a nice base to this when we get there, but that will be to be exposed when we do our repotting. So this looks wrong here, but it's not. Once it comes round here, and don't forget, once I start wiring, I can start thinking about the actual length of branches, and by then we'll know where the growth's going to be. So hopefully that'll work. Yeah, I think this is going to work okay. It's going to work okay. A nice layer here. You can have the blooms hanging down in future years. And then a little bit here, giving our shape over to here. This bit down here, again continuing our dome shape. And this one coming down and filling up some of this space here. And this one becoming a branch extension out this side. Yep, happy with that. So there we go then. It's a dwarf cherry in effect. It has gnarly wood. It has shiny sections, like some other cherries do. So it's a mix of all sorts of things. And very, very attractive, very small blooms. Because that's the one thing you can't mess with. If your flowering bonsai has big flowers on it, it's going to always have big flowers on it. You can't dwarf them. Same as you can't dwarf fruit. So that's, you know, when you get a crab apple, nice crab apple bonsai, you need to find the one that's got the tiniest fruit possible so that they look more in scale with the tree. Because there's nothing looks more silly than a tree that's a foot high that's got an apple on it that big. It just looks silly. Looks like somebody stuck it on there. Doesn't look real. Right, there we go. Quick look over this tree with some reduction in energy required to do what's necessary in the spring. by not having so much to do. Okay, I've taken away some of the energy of the tree as well by taking that wood off, but the overall energy in the tree now has got a lot less to do. It's got a bit less to do it with, but it's got a lot less to do. So we should get away with disturbing the roots without putting a stall on it, because we don't want to have to put it on the grumpy bench. This is the place where you repot a tree and it decides, I'm not growing this year. I didn't like what you just did in the spring. I didn't like that at all, so I'm just not going to grow. We just put it on the grumpy bench. Just forget about it for that season, because if it's not going to grow, it's not going to grow. And they do that sometimes. Okay, right. Whether that was a good idea or not, I don't actually know. I haven't got experience that says it was, and I couldn't find anything anywhere that would definitively say that was a good or bad idea, but it's done now, and we'll see what happens with the tree in the spring, see if it takes off. But yeah, it does form a craggy look to it, naturally, you know, without any help, so we'll see what it does in the spring. There we go then, thanks for dropping by. If you're not subscribed and you're still here, then it would be awfully nice if you did so. Always tag that on the end. But yeah, I'm getting there. The number of subscribers has gone over 900 now, which is not bad in the time I've had the channel running. So just getting that last little hurdle to get up to that magic 3 figures, 1,000, hopefully won't take too much longer now. And that will be my goal. So good stuff. See you next time.